My January tradition. So every January, I try to make videos on movies that I've seen and that I'm familiar enough with that are getting sequels this year. And if all goes right, James Cameron's Avatar is finally in that category. We got the first of 4 sequels coming out this December. So let's talk about this movie, the highest grossing movie of all time. Here we go. Avatar. So Avatar is directed by James Cameron, the director of Terminator, The Abyss, Titanic, just these huge ambitious movies. The guy has proven himself to be quite the well-known filmmaker. And so Avatar came out back in December of 2009, so a little over 12 years ago. I remember when this came out. I was a freshman in high school. I saw this movie when it came out. I saw it in IMAX and it blew my mind. This movie was huge when it came out, because really, we hadn't seen anything like it. I mean, yeah, it has a similar story to other movies, but we'd never really seen it told in this way. This was like a new way to tell an old story. Actually, that's a nice way of putting it. I'll touch more on that later on in the video, but for now, let's talk about what this movie's about. So James Cameron's Avatar takes place way in the future in the year 2154. The Earth's pretty much gone to shit, there's hardly any nature anymore, and so there's this distant planet, actually I think it's a moon, we call it Pandora. We have people there because there's this substance that's native to Pandora called unobtainium, which is worth a lot of money. So we're there on Pandora, we're mining for unobtainium. Only problem is there is an indigenous population of people on Pandora. They're called the Na'vi, and they have their own system, their own culture, their own ways of life. And their home tree, the place where this clan lives, happens to be sitting on this huge deposit of unobtainium. So we humans, we need to communicate with the Na'vi. In order to do that, we have the scientific division develop this program called the Avatar program. Basically, we create new bodies that are grown from the DNA of humans mixed with the DNA of Na'vi. So we have these separate bodies, and certain people can link their brains, they can transfer their consciousness from their human bodies to these avatar bodies. So now that we have these avatars that look more like Na'vi, we can better communicate and understand the Na'vi people. Enter our main character, Jake Sully, played by Sam Worthington. And it's funny, Sam Worthington, I, along with I'm pretty sure a lot of other people, had never heard of him before this movie came out. So when I first saw this movie, I was like, this guy's a really good actor. He just came out of nowhere. And the unfortunate thing is that we haven't really seen him do anything worth noting since. All the other movies he's been in since Avatar have, not been well reviewed at all. But as far as his performance in Avatar goes, I still think he was pretty good for this role. Because at first, he is clueless. He's an ex-Marine, ex-Marine. I know there's really no such thing as an ex-Marine. You may be out, but you never lose the attitude, as he says in this movie. But he's a paraplegic, and he's there to do a job. He's part of the Avatar program. He's assigned to make his way into this clan of Na'vi, they call themselves the Amaticaya clan, and gain their trust enough to let them know that, hey, the humans are coming, they're gonna bulldoze your tree, your home. And so that's exactly what Jake does, as his avatar. And so we spend a good chunk of this movie learning about the culture of these fictional Na'vi people with Jake Sully. And in that we meet Neytiri. Now, Neytiri is the daughter of the chief. She's played by Zoe Saldana. This is one of the movies that made Zoe Saldana the queen of sci-fi. It was this, Star Trek, and Guardians of the Galaxy. But watching this movie last night, I watched it for the first time in a while, I realized, damn, Zoe Saldana is actually really good in this movie. She speaks with a native accent, and at first, it's the basic story. She doesn't trust Jake initially because he's an outsider, but she is the one that ends up teaching Jake the ways of the clan. And so in that, the two of them end up forming quite the strong bond, which eventually develops into a romance. And I realized that during this part of the movie, not only is he falling in love with the people and the culture, but so was I. You get lost in it. That's the effect this movie has on you. You're learning about this immersive culture that doesn't actually exist, and you come to the conclusion that they are innocent as far as this whole unobtainium situation goes. They're good people. And Jake Sully's actually not the only one with an avatar here. Sigourney Weaver's in this movie, of course she is. She's a James Cameron veteran, and she's awesome in this movie. Her character's name is Grace Augustine. She's the head of the Avatar program. She's very knowledgeable about the Na'vi. She's a great supporting character. Now, as for the villains in this movie, I actually think we have some great villains here. First of all, Stephen Lang as Colonel Miles Quaritch. I love this guy. He's actually one of my favorite characters in the movie. Just because the way he carries himself, he's the big, brute military guy, but I just love his dialogue. He's got those big scratches on his head. He's explaining them. I did 3 tours Nigeria, not a scratch. I come out here, Day 1, think I felt like a shaved tail Louie? Now they can fix me up if I rotate back and make me pretty again, but you know what? I kind of like it. Reminds me every day what's out there. This guy knows his shit. He is working in collaboration with Parker Selfridge, played by Giovanni Ribisi, who, just by the fact that it's him, you know he's not gonna be a good guy. It's Giovanni Ribisi, for crying out loud. He's the really stuck-up businessman who really does not give a shit about the Na'vi at all. And he really sells that attitude. Again, he's really good. He really makes you hate him. Grace Augustine is trying to convince him of the beauty of this planet, the neural network that all the trees share. His response? What the hell have you people been smoking? They're just goddamn trees. God, what the fuck, dude? Again, really hateable character, which big props there. Now, of course, one of the biggest, if not the absolute biggest, selling point about this movie is the visual effects. So yeah, I can't not talk about them here. The world of Pandora is a visual marvel, and it holds up to this day. You just look at the geographical layout of this entire planet, you're like, I can't believe this is all CG? And of course, not only are all the environments completely CG, but the Na'vi characters, of course, they're CG too. And yeah, this is the movie that put motion capture on the map. I mean, before this, we had Gollum in Lord of the Rings, Andy Serkis, he was motion capture. But other than that, I don't think motion capture was used all that commonly. Avatar showed everyone that motion capture is a very good, convincing, and efficient way to give us CG characters in a movie. Because you look at Jake's avatar, you look at his face, and you're like, yeah, that does look like Sam Worthington's face, just on a Na'vi body. It was really impressive when this movie came out, which is why so many movies since then have been using motion capture to give us CG characters, like the Hulk. This is like the method we use from now on. Smaug the Dragon in The Hobbit was motion captured. It's just the way now, and it's awesome. And the culture of the Na'vi, specifically this Omaticaya clan, it's so immersive. And this is where I give all sorts of props to James Cameron, because he invented this fictional culture. They use a completely new invented language, a la Elvish in Lord of the Rings. That had to be invented. And these people, they're very primal, you know, they're like Native Americans. I mean, yeah, the parallel in the stories is very obvious, but it's still so cool. I mean, the way they dress is really neat. They go hunting for animals. They have these arrows that use a neurotoxin that will stop your heart in 1 minute. They have different ways of getting around. They fly on their banshees, or they call them ikrans. These big pterodactyl-like creatures. It's so awesome. And so you spend this movie engrossing yourself in this new culture, and all the while it's being enhanced by James Horner's musical score. This score, let me tell you, it's fantastic. It's so orchestral and dramatic. We have the choir in there. You feel like this music, yeah, it's also part of the Na'vi culture. I bought the soundtrack when it came out. I still listen to it, and whenever I do, it just takes me back to being a freshman. Ah, those simpler times. Getting back to the story of this movie though, yeah, this is where people's complaints tend to come in, because like I've been saying, the story of this movie is like other movies we've seen before. Dances with Wolves, Pocahontas. You know, it's that story of we're going to this native culture and one guy is sent in there to do a mission, but he ends up learning and loving and siding with this culture. And so we battle the humans for the turf. Yeah, it's a story we're familiar with. But honestly, I've never seen that as a valid argument against a movie. Because really, there are so many movies out there with plots like other movies, you know. West Side Story is the same story as Romeo and Juliet. That doesn't make it bad. It might make it unoriginal, but to me, unoriginal never meant bad. That's just how I see it, really. Another criticism I've heard about this movie is the writing, because I've heard that, yeah, sometimes James Cameron's writing can be really cheesy. And I'll admit, watching this movie last night, there were a couple of lines that I did scoff at. I was like, yeah, that's pretty cheesy. That line right there, that actually didn't quite land. But maybe it's the nostalgia talking, but the cheesy lines, for the most part in this movie, to me, that's part of the charm. It makes the whole thing a little more lighthearted and therefore easier to watch, because there are some pretty heavy scenes in this movie as well, emotionally speaking. And I'll tell you, they hit you really hard. There are some really sad scenes in this movie. When Neytiri cries, I tear up, at least a little bit. Just the specific way that she screams in anguish, it really hits me. You're like, man, this sucks. Fucking humans, why do they have to ruin everything? If for nothing else, this is the movie that makes everyone a hypocrite, because you're watching it and you're like, yeah, humans suck. Or at least that's what it does to me. But then there are the really emotional, uplifting scenes, like that speech that Jake gives to motivate the people where he's like, this is our land! I get goosebumps every time I watch that scene, because that's awesome. And the music crescendo's right there, and everyone's cheering, and I'm like, yeah! It's really well done. The story of this movie might not be original and the writing might be a little cheesy at times, but you can't deny that everything else about this movie is just top notch. And if the theatrical edition's not enough for you, there is an extended edition, which is the version I always prefer to watch. Why settle for less when you can have more? The extended scenes do a really good job at engrossing you even more into this world. It's great. Now, alright, if I may sidetrack for a minute, I got a bone to pick with people here. Cause these days, people do like to give this movie crap for being unoriginal or having bad writing, and just because of that, people say, oh, this movie is shit, it's terrible. But people, I was there when this movie came out. And you know what I saw? I saw nothing but praise for this movie. Everyone, everywhere, loved it. No one gave it crap. It was nominated for several Academy Awards, as well as other awards. I mean, the fact that it's still the highest grossing movie of all time after 12 years, that says something about it. And this December, at the end of this year, we are finally getting more of the story of Jake Sully and Neytiri and the Amaticaya and the Na'vi of Pandora. Yeah, I can't wait for it. These 4 Avatar sequels that James Cameron has been working on for years, they must be super ambitious, and I'm looking forward to seeing where the characters are now, what new stories are coming, new things about the world, the culture, the locations, the environments of Pandora. Dude, we have rides at Disney World about Avatar. There's this new video game coming later this year called Frontiers of Pandora that I'm looking forward to getting. You just can't deny that the world of Avatar that James Cameron has created has left its mark on pop culture. It's not often that something like that happens, especially these days. And it all goes back to this movie. I still love it, and I don't think that's ever gonna change. So, James Cameron's Avatar, have you seen it? What do you think about it? What did you think about it when it first came out compared to what do you think about it now? And are you looking forward to the sequels? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And of course, thank you for subscribing. Peace!